In part 1, I talked with Cain Leathem about having high standards, overgiving, and lifelong learning. We look at the difference between mental health and mental illness, and we take a deep dive into negative self-talk and how we have to be ready to change. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest Define Meaning. Now, let's dive in. Excellence is the result of caring more than others think is wise, risking more than others think is safe, dreaming more than others think is practical, and expecting more than others think is possible. Good morning, Cain.
Good morning.
Tell me more. What does a statement mean?
Okay, so it's actually a statement that I put into my award-winning courses in personal training, nutrition, and the like, but it's literally just wrapping up that people have different standards, applications, expect different things in life, drive for different things. I love that we're all different, but me personally, with the career path that I'm on, which I'm sure we'll get into it, a lot of people feel that I probably, maybe if the term is correct, overstudied, but I've moved from years of doing personal training and nutrition into studying sports therapy, NLP master practitioner, and then looking more in depth at clinical measuring of blood work, studying the newer generation of what's called functional medicine, which would include microbiome testing via stool, so all things gut, looking at hormonal in-depth testing, including circadian rhythms, cortisol patterns, things like that, looking at DNA assessments, but with health markers in mind, not the ancestral stuff. I also teach and try to be proactive with issues around mental health, and I teach first aid for mental health. So 2 weeks ago, tomorrow, I was speaking at Cardiff City Football Stadium on issues and matters around mental health. And I started that with, look, let's use the correct words. Terminology, words matter. People will talk about, for instance, mental health, and automatically people look at that and the connotation is negative. And I said, just switch that around. If somebody comes to you and said, I have mental health, oh no. Now, what if that same person came up and said, I have physical health? We'd be like, oh, great. What are you doing? Training, eating well, sleeping, all the good stuff. Why is one automatically positive, one automatically negative? And it's what we've become conditioned to. So I don't really go with that. I want to use the correct terminology. So poor mental health, issues with mental health. Hence, mental health has took a downturn. The difference between poor mental health and mental illness, which is diagnosable and potentially treatable. I'm very much about the detail, and I think that strap paragraph that you open with kind of sums me up. So I like that because I probably do put in too much effort for my clients. This morning, I've had 2 people I've done blood work, and lovely people. One I've worked with before, the other lady who's not long left. This is her first blood work through me, but I do work with her daughter. And for instance, just as an example, it's not a big deal, but she was supposed to bring a questionnaire and a food diary and all the things that I'd pre-sent weeks ago. And she, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot it. So I was like, no problem. I'll print it all off, bring it with you next week, get it to me in advance. That's what I do. One of the catchphrases, again, if you want to call it cliche, but I finished the mental health talk in Cardiff 2 weeks ago, was do sweat the small stuff. The details do matter. And in this day and age, and especially with what I call unsocial media, everybody's an expert on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Facebook, as I call it. And when you speak to them, oh, what makes you a personal trainer? I've been to the gym twice. What makes you a nutritionist? Somebody did my diet, so I know what I'm doing. And worse when it comes to issues around counselling, mental health, NLP. There are courses out there that you can do online, no exam, for 2 hours and get a certificate from one of these 29-pound Groupon living socials, whatever they are. And it's not even angers me, it scares me that people are putting their trust, physical and emotional well-being, which I like to call optimal being. And again, that's just raising the bar. So give you a little example. A mutual friend of ours It was all about setting the bar super high. And I can say that I was somewhat instrumental in actually using that term, setting the bar high, in a very practical way. And that gentleman you'll know as the Rhino, David Heiner. Yes, gentleman I've known for 25 years. And the raising the bar was actually 25 years ago when he was doing, he's what I'd like to call homework. He's very stringent and did a lot of study and interviews and information gathering before he became the wonderful speaker and huge motivational person for especially school children. He's done some work with my older son, Oscar, when I was coaching him through the 11 plus. But anyway, back in would have been 2000, 99, 2000, he interviewed, I took her in actually, a girlfriend of mine at the time who was an international high jumper, 7 times Welsh high jump champion, went on to win a silver medal at the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. And that is literally a bar, which is seen as a physical barrier. The example that I would give is, worked with David on this and Julie psychologically. If I went down to watch her train, it was in Solihull, she was with Birchfield Cardios, but training the side. So if I watched her train, because when I get into something, I study to the nth degree. So I'm no high jump coach. I became pretty knowledgeable in high jump and the biomechanics and the technicalities of. Never was her high jump coach. I did the strength conditioning nutrition. But let's put it this way. When I started working with her and she'd had, won't go into great detail, injuries and issues, I said, the person you're working with at the moment, and he was very high up in the coaching hierarchy, isn't the right person for you. Quite frankly, he's dangerous. She was so impressed with the new coach that we found, because we broke up by this time, but I was still helping her, still a friend. She was so impressed with the new coach. She married him and she's got a couple of kids with him, and he's an awesome high jump coach for the British squad and the like. But going back to the story, if I took the bar away, she's a high jumper, did, 12-step run up, arch over the bar, except she couldn't arch over the bar because this previous coach had as good as crippled her, and she had completely degeneration in 3 discs, 3 degenerated discs in the lumbar vertebrae. She was in a lot of pain and a lot of issues, a lot of treatment to get us through her training, which I said was successful, went on to a silver medal. But she couldn't arch over the bar. So she would actually jump straight. She didn't have that backward bend, basically, through no fault of her own. So I said, you've got to jump differently. Your coach is obsessed with you arching over the bar and being a certain way. You need to have more power through that one takeoff leg, because once you hit your optimum height, you're coming down because you can't articulate over the bar. That approach worked. But going back to the bar, this physical barrier, if you put the bar there, she would hit the bar at a certain height. The bar away, I would stand to the side, film it, and she would clear where that bar would have been. She was hitting the bar because the bar was there. And that's when people say set the bar high, because doing some psychological kind of techniques, it's like, forget about the bar. I mean, it has to be there in competition. I think if they modernized high jump and had a kind of laser break and actually assessed where people jumped, then we would see world records getting smashed. But anyway, we taught her to literally pretend the bar wasn't there. And guess what? She went on to PB and win a silver medal at Commonwealth Games. So again, is my philosophy. People very often, and I do it, we've all done it, we sell ourselves short. You've got to decide what is important to you. And if you really want it, to make the effort and go that extra mile that other people won't. And that's what I've done in my profession. So again, going back to, have I ever studied? I don't think so, because I can offer services and the quality of those services with great confidence over and above, and again, sounds arrogant, most people that I know. So there will be specialists in certain hormonal areas of nutrition or maybe contest prep for athletes and this and that, but I genuinely don't know anybody that does it all with the mental, the physical, the testing of, but that's took me 33 years. That's summing up the paragraph.
It's all right. There's a few key things, and I think you're completely right. In order to move through life and to really progress, there has to be a level of growth. And I feel as though when you get to a point where you stop growing, you start to stagnate. So I've really been on this journey for 10 years. But what I've noticed is how I went from depression, anxiety, not knowing where I was going, and bit by bit, step by step, and they were never big steps. And actually, when you're taking the steps, there's a little bit of confusion. Am I doing the right thing? Is this right for me? And so you have to have that faith, that kind of that drive to just keep going. And this is where it's got me to now. And I feel like we as human beings need to have that growth in order to excel. But this is one of those things that I think sometimes people get into this place where, especially, yeah, I think we get to a place where we sometimes get a little bit stagnated. And I suppose sometimes being stagnated is a good thing because stagnation allows us to see where we can improve.
Yeah,
At
it
the
gives
same
us
time.
different thinking time. And I will sort of cut in, but I will say, because your type A personalities, if you look into human psychology and stuff, very driven by goals. But I will give the flip side of that coin, and you're absolutely right. And if something inspires us, we should work towards it. And it won't always be easy, and growth and small steps, although David would argue somewhat, make it a huge goal and go for it anyway. But it doesn't mean we can't do small steps to get there. But sometimes, and I've learned this as I've got a little older, I'm not too old, Mike, but a little older, it's just being in the moment and not putting pressure on you and more importantly on yourself. I have 2 young children and we were just in the Lake District, came back yesterday. And it's just nice being in the moments, the pair of now and the monk sold his Ferrari and all that good stuff. Because I think in the modern commercial world, people very often judge their success by their financial gain and possessions and stuff. And what about your spiritual well-being? What about your happiness? Because I've traveled around the world. I've been to some amazing places, the rainforest in Venezuela. I worked in Africa. I toured around America for 3 months when I came out of the Air Force. I've seen a lot of the world. And I'm not saying I don't want to see more, and especially as my children get older. But now, my time with them, I cannot explain how precious it is. And I know everyone's, I love my kids so much. But literally, I'm twice married and divorced. I've been single for literally 7 years. It's a long time to be single. And especially for me, I'd enjoyed my single life. If really that stuff doesn't matter anymore. I'm not saying I'm close to it, but I'm not looking for it. And literally spending time and watching them play, the simplest things in life really mean so much to me now. So goal striving, where I've trained Olympians, world record holders, achieved good things in my academia. I studied a master's degree at Chester University, Waterloo, Liverpool, in exercise and nutrition science, which I ended up teaching on because, again, it's not being big-headed. I've been in the industry. I actually had more relevant experience than the tutors. And the head of the department called me in. And I thought, oh, am I going to get a bit of a, you seem to be struggling type thing? And he actually said, look, looking at your resume, would you give some guest talks on sports nutrition for us? Because and this was quite a confession, because it was a brand new course. This is many years ago before it got trended. And it was an offshoot of the sports science, but they didn't have nutritionists on the faculty. So I was actually more relevantly experienced and qualified than the tutors. So that's why I've always set a high standard, because I want to be in a room and I don't have to be the best, but I want to contribute. So I go to many seminars and online webinars, and it's about giving back. Same with the veterans. I do what I can. I never did anything great, heroic and wonderful in the Air Force. I was a cog in a wheel, and a very important one. I was a weapons technician, an armorer. So there's a saying in the Air Force, especially with armorers, without armaments, the Air Force is just a fancy flying club for rich folk. And it really is. If you're not strapping bombs, missiles, and to save them, ejection systems, which is a big part of what I did, onto and into fighters, then it's a jolly for the boys. But everybody has to trust each other. When that pilot or nav pulls the handle, and it's called a mountain biker ejection seat, they have to absolutely trust that what we've done is a good job. And that's the way I was raised as a child, quite disciplined, strict. I was in the Air Force at 17 and a half, and that's all I know. And I've carried that over. And I think you get a lot of that with military veterans and the frustration that I've been a civvy for many years, but you'll hear veterans talk, bloody civvies, they're never on time, they never do this, they never do that. And it's not that they're critical, it's that lives depended upon their efficiency to the nth degree. There's a saying, if you're on time, you're late. So the 6 P's, I draw into my boys, and they think it's funny to say it's penguins and it's P's, and they know what it means. Proper preparation prevents, I'll just say P, because that's what I say to the boys, people performance. But it is, and again, that's going back to that paragraph. But talking about goal setting and growth, sometimes you have to take a step back and go, not today. Today's a rest day. Today's a walk in nature. Today's a go and have a beer in a beer garden or go to the gym. You don't have to PB. Just go and enjoy it. Because again, life has become, in my experience of working with so many people across so many different demographics of life, be it age, be it fitness, be it where they are in their life financially, wherever. It's push. And I'm an absolute bugger for that, and I have been for many years. And it's only on reflection now, like I said, my two boys, 8 and 13, who are absolutely amazing. I will not take a day away from them. For instance, I have them every Saturday for pretty much anything. The one exception in the last few years has been Remembrance Day and March with the Armourers, very proudly from all scholars past the Senator. This year I'm not doing that because I want to take my older boy down. But people, can you run a course on a weekend? No, I've got my boys. Can you see me? I've been offered positions with sporting clubs. Let's say it's football, for instance, games on a Saturday. No, but we'll pay you really well. You can't pay me enough to neglect my boys, because that might be how they see it. Because remember, they're not with me every day. So Saturday's Daddy's Day, it's non-negotiable. What gives me growth in here? Not in my bank accounts, not in my business, in here. And I think people need to remember that growth isn't always about what you've got. Maybe it's about what you give.
Yeah. Because one thing I've come to realise this year and probably end of last year is it's great striving. My head always wants to be doing this, the productivity mindset. But when I shift myself out of my head and into my body, especially into my chest, into my heart's more like just be. Just chill, breathe. Because quite often what I find is that when we are able to connect to our heart, we go beyond what we can physically know, and we are able to connect something more, it's hard to explain, we're able to connect something a lot more spiritual, a lot more knowing. It's more like knowing. And this idea that when you're able to connect to your heart on this deep basis, you are able to connect into, I feel, ancient wisdom which isn't nothing out here, it's in here.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. And also, I was going to mention, when you're talking about the high jump, one thing I'm a big CrossFitter.
Right.
And one thing we're doing about a month ago was jumping, but like box jumps. And I was, so I was about here. I was jumping to about that height, probably my chest height. But I got to a point where my mind was literally, I can't. And I tried, but I couldn't cross that barrier.
Yeah.
And it's just eye-opening how when you're able to shift that barrier, you're able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good example. Again, if you took that away and if somebody filmed you from the side, but because we're about preservation. So it's not the same, but for instance, I don't like heights. Say I'm scared of heights, whatever. Okay. So if my guttering around the house is a bit blocked up, which thankfully it isn't, I'd rather pay somebody, and I've got the ladders, and I'll go up the ladders if I need to do it and clear it. But my knees are shaking, my belly's flipping, and my head's going, just pay somebody to do it. So many years ago, and I've not been a fan of heights from where I remember my whole life. So years ago, I took up skydiving and did 83 solo jumps in this area. And every single time I drove into a drop zone of several here, Langer, Dunk as well, Hinton, Western on the Green, even in Spain, Seville, etc. And every single time in my head, I'm going, what have you got to prove? Why are you doing this? You've done the jumps. You're still scared of heights. It doesn't make a difference. I loved being out of the plane. Once I've exited, love it. Under canopy, love it. But going up there, that anticipation. And that is pushing me, as you said, into growth. And we do have to challenge ourselves within the realms of safety. And that's what's happening when you're trying that bungee jumps. You'll look at it and all the reasoning in the world and go, oh, it's a nice big soft foam box. It's not made of steel or corrugated iron or wood or something. Nowadays, the plyo boxes in the gyms, it's not going to hurt that much if I smack into it. But that takeoff, people, because I've done it with people doing plyometric training, especially tracking athletes and the like. And it's like, somebody's nailed them to the floor. And it's like, I've raised it 2 inches from the last one, which you cleared by 5 inches. So it's a really good parallel, what you said with the high jump. And sometimes it's that, don't worry if you're scared, face your fear and do it anyway. There's nothing wrong with being scared. That's normal. It's healthy. Because if you're not scared, that's one thing they said. I gave up skydiving when we were expecting my firstborn, Oscar, the older, and sold all my stuff. And that was because, for instance, it was what's called a boogie, which is a big get-together. 2 people played in, I won't go into. One was seriously injured. The other one, unfortunately, lost his life. And I was supposed to be there that day jumping. And it was down to what they did. People take risks. I would not be willing for that to happen. And the impact it would have at the time on my son and now my sons. There is a self-preservation thing and we need to listen to it, but then sometimes it's pretty unfounded. Like I said, what's going to happen if you hit the bar and high jump? But the bar's going to come off. Unfortunately, it's not a legal jump. You get a second go. What's going to happen if you hit the foam plyo box? Okay, it's embarrassing more than it's hurtful. It's going to hurt your pride. It's not going to hurt you physically. But what I would do is then that's when a little bit of a pep talk and we take the hike back down and we build your confidence and even film it from the side. And that's one thing I'm good at is gaining trust. But doing that because I can explain in great detail what's going on and what needs to be done. Whereas a lot of coaches, PTs, it's that, just do it. Oh, come on, if you've got a brain, it's about survival. Just do it isn't good enough. Have the depth of knowledge and understanding and respect for that person and why things aren't getting done. Because this might be everyday behavior such as, are they eating well or not? Are they drinking too much? Are they sleeping? Are they taking their supplements? Are they doing their stretching? Are they doing their daily walk? Whatever. And some people, those are massive issues and barriers. And to others, it's like, just, what's the big deal? And if you've got social anxiety, going outside for a walk in fresh air, which ironically, and we're talking about, you've got the serotonin that raises your mood, and that's going to trigger melatonin, so you sleep better, and that's going to help your mood and your immune system and your hormones, but also social interaction, especially outdoors, BDNF, which is basically brain repair, hormone/chemical. I was talking about that when it came to mental health in Cardiff because of the issue around COVID and lockdowns. So me and my boys, regardless of the weather, we interact, we go out. We went to the Lake District, right? And the weather today is beautiful. On Tuesday, it's peeing day when we arrived. So what did we do? Did we cancel going out on the lake on the boats because the boys were stealing just a little lightweight motorized slow boat around the lakes? No, because what message am I sending to them if we're like, okay, we're only going to live a comfortable life. We're only going to do things when it's perfect. We went out there and they had the best time. I think they enjoyed it more because it was raining. For a start, everything was really quiet and the lake was empty, give or take. It was just fun. They were steering the boat, driving it as they called it, under canopy. But then I made sure they came out, they took in the sea, and they were in the moment. They were enjoying it for what it was. So I'm waffling on a little bit, but yeah, people need to not always, every day doesn't have to be, I need to achieve today. Maybe you need to recharge. If you pick up a mobile phone and it's losing a bit of power, plug it in then. Don't wait till it goes dead and then you've got to plug it in and you're worrying about the call that you might miss or, God forbid, the post on social or on social media. And if we took the same approach to our bodies, which was to listen, and that's why it's great when I do things like the bloods, because it might be that I see somebody's heading towards an issue, but they're not there. It hasn't manifested itself as yet. So I'm very proactive with it about health assessments. I offer everything wherever I do, whichever labs, and I work with labs all around the world. They're done at cost price, so it's as accessible as it can be. I'll educate people, ask your GP or the hospital for this, and I'll give them a run through and explanations. Because let's face it, if you do have a health issue, you shouldn't necessarily be paying for tests if you're under consultant or the GP care. But sometimes they're a bit lost. I'm not being critical as to what even to test. So if I can put them in the right direction, and again, that's that being excellent. Sounds big-headed. It is what I strive for. But it's not always about me achieving. I do achieve indirectly because I love helping people into better health, whether it's dealing with a health issue, illness, disease, or winning a gold medal at the Olympics, setting a world record. And I've helped people on both ends of that spectrum, if you want to call it that. One of the most satisfying things I ever did with all the champions I've got, world record holders, the lady's still in touch now. Her son's about 17, 18. And it was a kind of fertility issue with PCOS and stuff. I won't go into details, but she's still in touch now. because she was told she'd never naturally conceive. And even with IVF, it was a gamble and a risk. And she conceived naturally because of the help that I gave. But I could only do that because she invested in my advice. She trusted it. And thankfully it worked. So that feeds my soul. And more so now because this was years ago. My oldest is 13. So I'm saying this lad's 18, her son. So I didn't fully get the love is capable of and the impact and the beauty that children can have on your life. And now, when I think about what I helped her do, it's not life-changing, it's life-making. And if we could all think about others a little bit, and I mean by what we contribute and what we share and what we give to others, because I don't think we credit ourselves enough with that. And whether people appreciate it or not, I've helped people for years with all sorts of things, never hear from them. Whereas in contrast, this lady still keeps in touch. And that's just people. But you know what? I know what I've done. I know how I've helped. And if we could all do that and be a bit more open-minded and open-hearted, wouldn't the world be a better place? Especially now. The world's a crazy place, isn't it? Jesus Christ.
It is crazy.
I try not to watch the news. I try not to read newspapers, but I need to keep up. I know what's going on. My God, it's depressing. It's absolutely depressing. Don't even know why I'm laughing because I am genuinely fearful for the world my children will live in 10, 15, 20 years.
I was going to ask you to tell me about yourself, but I feel as though over the last probably 10 minutes, we've covered that. So what I'm interested in is you were mentioning about mental health and how when people hear the word mental health, they think, oh no, what's going to happen? What's that all about?
Okay, so the first slide, and I give talks on issues around male suicide, which is horrendous statistically, especially within the veteran community, male and female, but males massively outnumber females. But I start some of my mental health talks, and I did 2 weeks ago in Guided with, it's a quote by bipolar.com. I always like to credit my tutors, and if somebody's made a quote, I'm not pretending everything's from me, and it's, we all have mental health. You have mental health. I have mental health. We all have mental health. And there's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of talk about it, and everyone's trying to solve problems, and that's nice. But let's just respect that it isn't always a bad thing. And yes, we want to improve our own and others, but let's assess where somebody is and where they want to be and what's practical. Because maybe this wonderful utopia that people want to live in, where everything's perfect, maybe that's not realistic. We all have up days, down days, good days, bad days. We're trying to optimize what our mental health should be. Because if I use the parallel with physical health, and I've got 18 Olympic champions, 14 world champions, 6 Miss Universe winners, 4 world record holders on my CV. Now, if I took regular clients, so I've got a lady coming to see me this afternoon, we're going to do some very gentle, lightweight training, home training. She was a client many years ago. There's been some health problems over the years. Lovely lady. Now, am I going to train her like I would one of the professional football players or a world record holder in cycling? Guy Dave LaGrosse, who's an awesome guy. And he's written his autobiography, his health issues. He's a little older now, the last few years, and he's a phenomenon. This guy's a machine. And he's been a top coach to many cyclists, you'd know the name. So, and he wrote in his book, Cain Changed My Life. And it was because I did some NLP with him, which he called that mind shit. So he came to see me for his nutrition. Many of his cyclists who were great in the Olympics, he was coaching them, came to me for some strength conditioning and nutrition work years ago. Because once you work successfully with one type of athlete, you get loads calling you. And they kept saying to him, Dave, you've got to go see Cain. You've got to go see Cain. And he's in Essex, I'm in Birmingham. And he eventually came up and we did some nutrition. And this guy was, he was like, he's 25 times world champion. He hadn't got the world record. It'd been after many years. I said, you've got to improve your nutrition. Because this guy was running on sandwiches, cans of Coke and cigarettes and beer. And I was like, imagine if you had the right fuel and recovery. And he said, you do that mind shit, don't you? I says, if you mean neuro-linguistic programming, yeah, I do that NLP mind shit. He was so impressed with what we did because it helped him get the world record. Mm-hmm. Years. He actually studied it and he helped his athletes, his cyclists. By me doing something that helped him, he was like, I want to do that for others. So with that in mind, where am I going to go in the future with this as well is something, because you're talking about growth. And I'll be honest, I'm going to say cards on the table. I feel a little bit stagnant because I know what I'm doing is high-end work. But I wouldn't say I've run out of challenges, but it's almost, should I cruise for a bit, being happy where I am, knowing I'm making a difference, or do I need to raise the bar? Because something inside of me goes, you need to raise the bar. You need to raise the bar, Kay. You need to do something new. You need to keep growing. And sometimes we need to go, what I'm doing is enough at the moment. I've been watching yourself develop and grow in your podcasts and these interviews. And I think it's fair to say you've probably picked stuff up the same as I've picked up off literally seeing thousands of clients over the years. But going back to, would I push everybody like this lady's coming to see me this afternoon, like an Olympic sprinter? No. So everybody with their mental health, like their physical health, maybe has a different end goal. And for someone going through mental turmoil, so let's say it's PTSD or something like that, just being free of that is enough. We don't have to always walk around with massive smiles on our faces. Just being free of pain and anguish, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough forever, that they can just close their eyes without demons and flashbacks. Or maybe they'll get to that point, and like you said, with the stepping stones, small steps, maybe that will be enough to get them on to the next step. And again, don't always strive for perfection, be it physical health or emotional health. When I speak on issues around emotional/mental health, I have this big thing about we all have it. We're all in a different place, but maybe the place we're striving for is different for each of us as well. I've got a picture above my head, I'll do this if I may, that says, see, think about things and the word differently is underneath. And I say to my clients, what you want and therefore what you get from me is different to what I would want for myself and what other clients want for themselves. I have no set agenda that I'm trying to make everybody optimally, physically and emotionally, mentally perfect, because let's face it, I deal with top bodybuilders. I used to be into that. I was knocking around bodybuilders for many years and had the muscular aesthetic shape and the ridiculous low body fat and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's nice to see that in the mirror. Does it make a massive difference to your life? Not really. At the time it did. I was over Sage Flash. I was teaching in Grand Cayman. My course is PT nutrition. So I wanted to walk in a room and people go, whoa, this guy knows what he's about. You know what I'm about? It's this muscle between my ears. I could go in there looking at whatever. What I'm imparting is knowledge. But at the end of the day, excuse the French, bullshit baffles brains if you look the part. But again, I know people who look amazing. Emotionally, they are not happy, possibly because of things they've done to get there. The restrictions in diet, time away from the family, not having a drink on a hot summer's day, not enjoying a dessert. We need to stop putting people in little boxes and understand the world is massively diverse, and to appreciate we can learn from each other, but we don't have to be each other. Again, sorry, long-winded answer, but individuality to me is everything. When I do the testing, when I do plans, when I do diets, when I do training programs, it's about doing it with and in conjunction with and through conversation with my client. I have no set script. And this is another problem with on social media. I'm doing you a bespoke nutrition plan. Really? The same plan they've emailed to 1,000 other people, because what questions have they asked you? The lady this morning came, she has some previous blood work and she's retired. And I says, did they put this into context? Did they ask why you're having them? Are you taking supplements? What medications do you want? What are your goals? No, they've just run my bloods. You can't recite the results blindly. Because, for instance, the test I've done this morning, we're measuring things like B vitamin D. She's had to stop her supplements a few weeks ago to get her baseline levels without the influence of the supplements. Alcohol for 3-4 days, no hard training for 3-4 days, water only, it's only for the last 12 hours. These things for some people seem, that's a bit finicky, that's a bit strict, that's a bit correct is what it is. That's how we get things done properly. Okay? Do sweat the small stuff. So when I get the results back, which will be tomorrow or the next day, I'll know that it's not been skewed by bad practice. And when people say, why didn't the doctor tell me that? Why didn't the hospital say it? Maybe they don't have the same standards. Maybe they don't have the time or the inclination to take the time to explain why this is important. Maybe they know people won't listen. But if somebody comes to me and they say, actually, I've forgotten how to drink yesterday, I did a workout yesterday, I've had my breakfast this morning, I go, you know what, let's reschedule. because I'm about doing things properly or not.
This brings me perfectly to the idea. This is to do with my car. So I recently have had a bad stint with my car, and I've had to have a new dual mass flywheel in the engine. And it went to this place, this garage, and I thought, yeah, this is perfect. It's close, it's cheap, and went there.
I've got alarm bells going off. Close and cheap, convenient.
Yeah, they didn't do it properly, so it's churning again. And I took it to, they basically bought a second-hand one, thinking it would be all right. But what they didn't know is that on manuals compared to automatics, you have to use precision equipment to set the dual mass flywheel. And so it churned up, and I ended up just about making it to his garage in just about half an hour, 40 minutes away. And they said, you can't drive us back. You're going to end up breaking down. So I had to have a whole new dual mass flywheel, and it cost me twice as much as what it was. But it's some people don't want to know about how they can make it better, or are they doing it right? Because if they do, it's harder work. It takes time, it takes effort. And this goes on quite nicely. You're talking about earlier how mental health is mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, all individual, because we're all individual beings, but I do feel we're connected, just to throw that in there. Yeah. But I feel as though when it comes to individual stuff, there's this idea like relationships. When somebody breaks up in a relationship, some people find it really easy to move on. Others for me, myself, I've taken 3 years from a breakup just so I can heal properly, so that I can do the work, the growth. And what I find is that some people really find it quite hard. I know people at the moment who are just really struggling because of a relationship. And it's, as somebody it's hard to understand sometimes what that person's going through because you're not living their experience. And it's almost about listening and supporting rather than saying you could try this and this.
Yeah, we don't always have to help or fix as much as we just have to sometimes be there. It's a really good point, James.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was initially trying to fix, but then I realized, I'm stepping into what a lot of men do, I think, is they step into fixing mode. But sometimes we just need to pull ourselves back and step into the listening mode. Yeah. Allowing them to be heard is a big one. And what I wanted to talk about, you mentioned about with mental health, how obviously we all go through our own individual battles, whatever it is. And sometimes we're caught in this trap of negative self-talk.
Big time, yeah.
And how we get caught in this spinning, what I probably call a hurricane we can't get out of. How do you work with clients who are in that position, and how can you help them?
Good question, because I will say, and straight into my head, some people aren't ready for help. So when somebody comes to me, and this might be for a diet, might be training, might be mental health advice, help, counselling, whatever. When somebody else calls on their behalf, good question, because I will say, and straight into my head, some people aren't ready for help. So when somebody comes to me, and this might be for a diet, might be training, might be mental health advice, help, counselling, whatever. When somebody else calls on their behalf, I'm always very dubious about, is this because somebody's trying to be the helper fixer, or is this because the person that is involved, the client, wants it? So I always say, let's say it's your partner, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, son, daughter, mum, dad, whatever. Have you spoke to them? Is this something they want? Are they ready for the changes that is going to put them into a better place? Or do you want to help them, which is admirable, it's applaudable, but maybe they're not in the place to accept and they're not ready. And you're putting unnecessary pressure on them. And ultimately, you might be paying money for something somebody isn't going to follow up. You're absolutely right. And as men, I think we want to be that provider, that fixer. But each person that comes to me is, what do you want from me? How can I help you? And it's amazing how many people will call me, book in, and they go, I'm not sure. And then it's very organic and conversational. A consultation with me will take hours. I go in with no preconceived ideas. Yes, I might have previous health history, blood test results. They fill in a 4-page questionnaire, keep a training and food diary and all of that. But what happens when we go into conversation, very often, the destination of what they thought they wanted and the reality are hugely different. They're different postcodes, not even the same vicinity. So opening up and giving somebody room to talk, when somebody is ready, I want them to ask for it, not for somebody else to ask for it. They say, whether it's addiction, whatever it is, you've really got to open your heart and mind up to the fact that there is a problem before you will seek help. Because you might go, yeah, I do this too much, I do that too much, I don't do enough of this. But you're in denial. The minute you go, actually, this is starting to be a problem, or it could be a problem, I need to go and seek advice, help, mentoring, whatever it might be. But I think it's very important the person is involved in that decision. And rather than being intervention by those people around, that's one point I would make. If somebody's not ready, they're not ready for change.
Thanks for tuning in to Man, A Quest to Find Meaning. If today's conversation sparked something in you, take a moment to reflect, then take a step. Remember, real growth comes from action, not just insight. If you found value in this episode, share it with a friend, leave a review, or reach out and let me know what resonated. Your feedback helps shape the journey we're on together. For more conversations like this, make sure to subscribe and stay connected. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for updates, tools, and upcoming guests. Remember, it's not about having the answers, it's about daring to look.